And from Columbus, Ohio, I'm your host, Robb Dunewood.
And coming out of Philly, it's your girl, Tech Life Steph.
And out of Atlanta, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech, aka. Remember last week when I said I believe in Coach Prime? Forget all that. Forget all that.
Don't be a weather fan, man. Don't be
Never mind.
a weather
So-
fan.
Never mind.
I'm consistent. I thought they were going to take an L. I thought they were going to cover. I did not expect the slobber knocking that we saw this past weekend because they got rolled.
I mean, if whoever out there didn't assume that one of these days they was gonna get smashed, you're fooling yourself.
Of course, I didn't watch, so I heard they lost, but
They got beat
obviously
pretty
did
bad.
not
They-
watch.
they
It makes
got
so funny. I was on the way somewhere coming back from soccer, and my son had to use the bathroom, so we stopped in a hotel. I went to the hotel restroom, came out of the hotel restroom, just happened to look up because on the way to the bathroom there's the bar. Happened to look up. Of course, all the TVs are on the Colorado game. I mean, they getting smashed in the fourth quarter, and I look up and I say, "Oh man, they getting demolished." And the people, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, thank you Jesus, thank God." I'm like, "Dang, y'all want to lose that bad?" I mean, they like were. It's like a wash of relief over a
Well,
lot of
and
people.
that's a whole nother conversation on why everybody wanted this man to lose so bad. You know, that's a whole nother conversation for a different time.
Yeah, buddy.
It's still a thing, though. The fact that we are leading off a technology show talking about college football in Colorado let you know that it's a thing. But anyway, this is a tech show. And one of the things that we always do or usually do at the beginning of the show is allow, or I should say, we should let people know how they can support the show. So we are on Patreon, y'all. If you were to head over to patreon.com/the Tech Jawn, you will find multiple tiers over there, any one of which gets you access to our live stream. That's what we're doing right now. And our after party, which is like a club for our patrons after the show airs live. So if you're interested in that, head over to patreon.com/the Tech Jawn and you can support us there. But that being said, let's go ahead and jump into some tech because there was quite a bit of tech stories that went on this week. And this first one, I want to say big. I don't know if it's big, but it definitely is necessary. So Google has announced Project Elevate Black Voices. And that is in partnership with Howard University to improve technology used in automatic speech recognition. So to make a long story short, and we talked about this before, African Americans, or I should say, there is a dialect. We actually have, something called African American vernacular English, or AAVE or AAE, depending on how you say it. And one of the problems that we have, and we've talked about this, is code switching, to where, when we go into the workplace, we tend to talk differently than we talk amongst ourselves or when we're comfortable with close friends and family. I think it's safe to say that there's been a light shined on that to where it's something that we maybe have to do less and less. But the problem is that these daggone voice assistants don't understand what we say when we do not talk like our mama talked when she talking business back in 1984 when she was on the phone. So what Google and Howard are doing is they're actually creating a data set. They want to get good data in so that they can ultimately get good data out, so that they literally can have better results to where you can talk like you normally talk. You don't have to feel like you're some other in your own house when you're trying to get, that assistant. I'm not going to say it because I don't want mine to go off. I got them both sitting over there. You don't want it to go, when you want to actually talk to it and ask it to do something, you don't want to have to change the way you talk to get your assistant to work with you. So I wanted to get you guys' take on that. I thought this was kind of a cool story that looks like if it goes right, it will expand significantly from where it is today.
Well, I think, number one, for anybody listening, it's not just about having the voice assistant recognize slang. This is, I think there might be somebody like, oh, now we got to know all the slang terms that Black people talk about. It's not just a matter of having, voice assistants recognize the latest slang terms in the hood, basically. I think this goes, a little bit further than that. And I could see it recognizing like Gullah dialects of South Carolina,
Creole,
Hmm.
Creole
some
dialects
patois.
in patois,
Yeah,
like there's a whole lot of different, dialects in the diaspora, if you will, in the United States, not even talking about around the world, but just within the United States, there's a whole lot of different dialects that are a part of the Black experience that just wouldn't get picked up by a voice assistant because it just didn't know. So I think this is a really good start to try to incorporate some of that language into these data sets. And kudos to Google for recognizing that. Kudos to Google for recognizing that they were not the ones that needed to lead the research on this, and bringing in a entity like a Howard University to partner with to do some of this work as well.
yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's not a slang, you know, a process for people to learn or technology to learn slang, because that can be updated or changed daily, weekly,
Right.
depending on, what's going on in news, depending on whatever the case may be. Social media has a major impact into how we communicate, and the term and terminologies, and that stuff changes a lot, so just thinking that, oh, okay, we're just going to learn slang, that's an ongoing effort. Now, of course, this is an ongoing effort as well, but there's more substantiality in some of these dialects that can be, what's the word I'm looking for? It can be as a baseline,
Right.
as a basic, for different dialects to be understood without feeling like, all right, we got to update it again because a new new word came out or whatever the case may be. That's definitely not the case, because if you try to get into that, you're going to be going get into an ongoing effort, and then you've got other people who say, well, we want our stuff in there. It's like, well, as long as this meets these criteria, yada yada yada, then maybe that's a possibility, versus just, oh, we're just updating this because slang is changing on a weekly basis.
Yeah, that's important to point out. It's not slang at all. It is, African American English or African American vernacular English. It is literally a dialect. So this is the way that we learned how to speak the language, but we're bilingual. We also learned how, white America or mainstream America learned how to speak English as well. And we have just conformed to, we literally are acting in a form. It's almost like like actors can talk in different dialects, they can talk in different accents, this and that and the other, but it's a conscious decision for them to do so. When we, for folks who speak AAVE, it is a conscious thing that you're doing to make yourself sound somehow different than that. So that's not slang.
Right.
Those aren't just, it is partly colloquialisms, but it's not just that. It's literally the way that your brain process language as you were learning to speak it. So that's why they look at it as a dialect and not just as an accent. You can say, like, like, we generally don't say people who have a Southern accent, which you really mean is they have a Southern dialect. They're speaking the same language. They just learn how to speak it differently from a very, very early age. But it's not frowned upon that they talk the way that they talk, where they talk like that. Same thing if you go to the far East Coast, folks have a dialect of how they speak, like in Boston, or how they speak in parts of New York, so on and so forth. So that is it is a good thing that we're looking at it. One of the sentences in the whole 9, 10, 11 paragraphs of this Google article that I read that stuck out to me was, and I'll just read the last sentence here. Howard University will retain ownership of the data
I
set
knew
and
you was going
licensing
there. I knew
and
you was
serve
going
as
there.
stewards
That's the
for
one
its
I picked out
responsible
too.
use.
I'm like, boy,
Um,
oh boy, oh boy.
that is the conversation for me,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
the concern,
Absolutely.
I know the concern, Stephanie, you're voicing it now, but I'm sure it was a concern for you as well, Terrance, is that, okay, Google, you're doing this thing, but this is now your data. In 2 or 3
Man,
years, 5 or 6 years, when you have the information, do you just
the
decide that we don't need Howard anymore? We
the
can just make
way
these decisions
my
on how
and
Black people talk.
the way my antenna perked up at that sentence, and I'm like, "So, are we getting the?" Because it sounded like it was trying to be some low key kind of licensing deal or something. So I'm like, "Are we getting any of the monies around the use of this data set? Like, is Howard getting residuals? Like, how is this working?" With the bag, like, show me the money and the bag on this, because if you are going to be, it sounds like Howard is going to be largely responsible for the curation of the data that is going to train these large language models, which is what they're going to be, coordinating the volunteers that will be contributing to the language, all of that. Google is getting the data from Howard, basically. And so, like, who's going to own this data, and who is going to be able to lay claim to this data, who is going to be making money off this data, how will this data be monetized, and at the end of the day, who will own this data, after all is said and done. And that's going to be the real question, because, like you said, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when I can say, "Yo, Alexa, I'm finna run down to the store to blah 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 blah," and Alexa knows what that means, and some advertiser gets 2 cents on the dollar because Alexa knew I was finna order something off of Amazon, like, who's getting that money? So it's just, yeah, that's gonna be the real test. That's gonna be the real test. I
It's
don't
Compute
know.
smart.
Let's
Go
say
ahead,
computers
Terrance.
don't do nothing out of the kindness of their hearts. So
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So this is smart. Whether it was smart on Google's part to actually have it be this way, or if it's smart on Howard's part to say, if we get down with you, this is how it's going to be. I don't know which one of those it is. Maybe it will come out, but in either case, it really is smart. Let's look at it from the Google perspective. Google can tell you to their blue in the face that we are trying to be more diverse. We are trying to make things more diverse and more equitable in our company. Something that Google will never be as black as Howard is. It will never be that. Um, and honestly, it probably never should be. That's not what Google is there for. So the fact that you're going to leave this with Howard, and I don't want to say that Howard University is like the mecca of of blackness in the United States. One of the things that I liked about this article as well is one of the quotes from one of the directors at Howard that's going to be heading this off. I'll just read it. I see this becoming a whole consortium of HBCUs that work together to understand and improve technology for Black people in a respectful way and show that you can create technology that celebrates Black voices. That's
Mhm.
really smart. Because if you generally want to find out how African American talks, how African Americans talk when they are relaxed and and not code switching, if you were to go to a consortium of HBCUs, you probably are going to find something that that targets the center of how people talk around the country there. That's probably a good place for it. So, and the fact that these universities are equipped to actually do this kind of research to kind of, to try to actually, they've got people don't realize that there's a lot of really good computer science departments and a lot of HBCUs. I mean, some of the best, computer departments in states, in state, as far as state run schools are concerned, are right at HBCUs. So the fact that they're going to be doing this work there, and they're already looking at let's get this beyond Howard. Let's get to HBCUs as a place where we can go and do this work. I just kind of thought that was cool. But just to wrap that point up, I am so glad that this is not a Google thing after they get done with Howard. This will always be a Howard thing, at least how this reads right now.
We'll see. We shall see. Like, show me the money. That's all I'm saying. Because, yeah, it could go left really easily, and I could see a situation where they try to cut um that HBCU element out of the process once they feel like they have enough data to
or if
move
they hit a
forward
gold
on their
mine,
own. Yeah.
let's say
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
thing takes
Mhm.
Yeah.
off. They're like,
Yeah.
"Hey,
They're like, yeah, what
that agreement we had,
right. Once they feel like they have enough data to move forward on their own, I could definitely see them trying to do that. So hopefully you know, they don't that doesn't happen, and or somebody just doesn't get greedy and they see the benefit and the value of the partnership moving forward and continuing moving forward. That's all.
So y'all keeping with Google, Steph, I believe you threw this story in there, but Google has had tech go wrong, specifically with Google Maps. And the story is a man lost his life. He ultimately drove off of a condemned or a bridge that I don't even think you could say was under construction. It's just kind of like they just kind of left it sitting there. It'd been years that it had been in
Right,
disarray, but Google directed him off of a bridge that didn't have a barrier blocking it, to where he fell 20 feet into a stream and then drowned.
right.
So why don't you tell us about this story?
Yeah, the family is suing Google. They're suing a few different people, but Google has been named in a lawsuit by a family in North Carolina, claiming that the company's Maps application last year led him to drive off of a collapsed bridge and fall about 20 feet to
Mm.
his death. Philip Paxson was following Google Maps directions while driving home late at night in September 2022 from his daughter's ninth birthday party, when the navigation system directed him to go over an unmarked and unbarricaded bridge that had collapsed years prior. He drove off the bridge and he drowned. The lawsuit said that neighbors had expressed concern that Google Maps had led drivers over this bridge, which had allegedly not seen repairs since its partial collapse in 2013. So this bridge had been collapsed and unbarricaded since for over 10 years at this point. People had already reported to Google Maps that the bridge was unrepaired and unbarricaded. They had gotten responses from Google saying thank you for reporting it. We'll look into it. And they had reported it to the road crews and things in that neighborhood. So people knew that this bridge was not fixed, that the bridge was unbarricaded. Like from all intents and purposes, allegedly, everybody knew that this bridge was out, and that there were no barricades and nothing preventing anybody from hurting themselves on this bridge. So I'm not sure how it had been allowed to go like this for so long, for 10 years. But unfortunately, this gentleman, late at night couldn't see. He was just following what the directions were telling him to do, and where they were telling him to go. And unfortunately drove off the bridge. So I put this in here specifically because I saw the story before it about, you know, African American English and things like that. And we talk a lot on this show about how technology affects people of color negatively, specifically. But when technology doesn't work, it can affect all of us negatively, and unfortunately sometimes fatally. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us as humans in society to hold these technology companies accountable for the tech products that they produce when they're not functioning properly, because things like this can happen. I mean, I think this is, certainly a worst case scenario type of thing, but it is still something that did happen and that can happen when we're not holding these tech companies accountable. So, it's not just a matter of soap dispensers that don't work for black hands. This is also a worst case scenario thing that can happen for anybody when the tech doesn't function properly. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us as members of society to make sure that tech works for everybody.
I'm curious. This is well, from a Google standpoint, if I were trying to be a Google representative, my
Hmm.
first question would be, I'm curious as to why the city or local municipality or local, you mentioned in the story that people locally knew about the bridge being out,
Right.
and people have been interviewed and they've talked about how Google has been sending people down here and that could be dangerous. I'm curious as to why the city or the local municipality, because 10 years is a long time. I
It's
could
a long
see,
time. I'm
I
like,
was reading
Mhm.
this thinking like, okay, well, clearly there's a lapse in when the bridge was damaged, and then Google satellites flew over the area and noticed that the bridge was down, and in between that time, that buffer where before Google could update their maps, this guy, had this incident. Now that ain't even the case. It's been 10 years
It's
Mhm.
been
since
10
anybody has done
years.
anything. So I'm curious as to why the municipalities wasn't involved prior, well, at all, apparently. I mean, now let's just say, now that this accident has happened, who's responsible for repairing the bridge? Is it going to be Google? Is it going to be the city? Is Google going to put some money towards that? Is Google going to say that ain't my problem? Is the city municipality going to sit back and let Google take all the heat? I'm curious as to not
Well,
necessarily
I
who's at
believe
fault,
the
but where do
city
we go from here?
is in the lawsuit as well. Like,
Okay.
Mhm.
yeah, there are multiple entities involved in the lawsuit,
Okay.
but Google being one of them
And it
because
being a
he
tech
was
angle. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because he was the one he was following Google
Hmm.
Maps, which should have been updated as well because they had been informed of the fact that the bridge was out and they didn't update their technology the same way the city and the municipality didn't fix that barricade
Hmm.
or fix the bridge, at the same time over the past 10 years.
When I first
Hmm.
saw this story, I actually went back and found some actual TV reporting. So a couple of things. Folks are saying, well, don't you have to be somewhat responsible for driving off of a bridge yourself? It was a torrential downpour. With there's no street lights here. This is like rural North Carolina.
Right.
So it's foggy and it's dark and it's raining cats and dogs. This gentleman did not know the area. So he's going by Google Maps. And when it is that kind of dark outside, you're not expecting that just continuing to go straight on the road is going to be a 20-foot drop off. You
And
can't necessarily
visibility
see
is
that.
zero,
And,
and
and the
all you
visibility is
have
so
to
low.
go off of is your phone saying turn left at such and such, turn right or station. Like if all you have to go off of is your phone because you can't see
Yeah.
anything, you're relying on this piece of technology to get it right.
Yeah, and so the municipality, of course, is responsible for repairing the roads, but it could be the fact that they haven't done it in 10 years. They just decided that, well, there's not enough people who need this. There's other routes that we can use. We're just not going to repair it. So the municipality, they did have at one point barricades and stuff like that up, but there have been reports after report after report for years because he's just the first one to lose his life. He's not the first one to be directed down this and
Right.
almost drive off. I guess others have almost done this same thing. It fortunately for them, it might have been during the day or it wasn't raining cats and dogs, and they were able to see and they were able to stop short of doing it. But
Right.
vandalism is what the city is saying is that, well, we had barricades up, but they were vandalized and people took them down. Don't know how much that's going to fly
That's not
because
They in
gonna
according to
fly.
the
British,
That's
man.
that's
reporting,
not gonna fly
yeah,
in court.
according to the reporting, you were notified that there was vandalism before this gentleman drove off of it. So if you know, it's kind of like if you know that there is a bridge that is out and Google is sending people to it, you need to do everything you
And you need a
possibly can.
vandalism proof barricade.
Exactly.
Like, come
It's like
on,
if you need to
man.
get a sheriff and put them there with their car with lights on a night like this, you have to anticipate those kind of things can happen. So I'm guessing that this family, and I cannot imagine, what they're going through. That 9-year-old daughter will never think of her birthday the same way because that's the day
I
she lost
know.
daddy. Um, but that being said, I think Google definitely has some culpability here because you have been told on numerous occasions. That's what the
Numerous.
reports are saying. They didn't say one
Yes.
or two people. They say numerous occasions you have been notified that your maps are leading people to a bridge that is out that does not have adequate barricades to stop people from
And
plowing
they
over.
responded to it. So they said they auto replied on numerous occasions, thanking people for their report. Your suggestion is being reviewed. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. We'll let you know once so they acknowledge that they've gotten these reports that the bridge is out and
And
blah
I'm
blah blah
pretty
blah. Blah.
sure there's a history because, you can in Google Maps, Apple Maps, all of them, you can send feedback, submit feedback, and
Right.
say, "Hey, this ain't working." So it ain't like they can't say, "Well, we didn't know." There's
Right.
there's
Over
data,
over
there's
over
records.
10 years,
Mhm.
there are change history logs, galore. So it's just like it would have been a simple thing to
Don't go this
do.
way.
Yeah, it would have been a simple thing to do to
Yeah.
to make that update over the past 10 years
No,
and
you would
and
think
and
Google could actually warning, rolled out, something like that.
They would
They
just
could do
wouldn't even
something to
route people
protect
that
people.
way. The way I see it working is they would just not route people
Yeah.
that
Just
way.
don't send people that way. Yeah, and it
And
would have
if
been
you're
such a
local,
simple thing to do.
right, and if you're a local and you're looking at the Google Maps and it's dark and it's raining, it's whatever the case may be, and you know that the bridge is there, you thinking like maybe after 10 years they would have fixed it. Why is Google telling me to go around? Because Google said, no, the bridge ain't out, until otherwise notified, you just can't go that way.
Right. Yeah. It's just this that was yeah, Google I feel like Google may have some liability in this because you had 10 years to update your map and you just didn't do it. And that's just that's negligence. I think that I mean I'm not an attorney, so this is not legal advice. But that's kind of sort of fits the definition of negligence to me. Like you had enough time to update your system and you just didn't do it.
If I had to, if I were a betting person and I were betting on this, Google will settle with this family for an
They should.
undisclosed amount,
They
and
should.
they will admit no culpability in
Oh,
anything.
absolutely. Yeah, they're not gonna they're
That's
definitely
just
not
how
yeah,
this is going to
yeah,
happen.
they're
So,
definitely not gonna
unless the family says no, we want to take this to trial, which at this
yeah,
point,
they
I
may
don't know
want
what they would
approval
do.
points.
Maybe they want to
Yeah,
do that to just to make the point known. But my gut tells me they're going to settle this for some undisclosed amount that we will never hear about,
yeah,
and they will acknowledge nothing was wrong. It's just
yeah,
an unfortunate accident. It is an unfortunate accident,
it
but
is.
it's like, hey, you know what? Telling people to drive off a 20-foot drop off of a bridge that's been condemned for 10 years when people have told you that the bridge has been condemned for 10 years, not a good look, Google.
At all. At all. And it's just yeah, it sucks. But again, just to say tech doesn't work for everybody. So it's up to all of us to raise our voices, hold these companies accountable.
So, Terrance, I know you stuck this one in here. I have not been single since like the mid to late 90s. But even if I were, and, maybe I can't. So, Steph, I'll defer to you on this one because you're the single one out of all of us here. But Tinder has a $500 a month plan. You
Not
pay
gonna
a
be
five.
not
So
gonna be able to do it.
you're the demographic for this. Are you $500 to be on
Nope.
Tinder?
Well,
Nope.
so here's the thing, right? So about this story, which is so odd, uh, in addition to it being $500 a month, this new tier that Tinder has recently rolled out, you have to apply. According to this, according to what I'm reading, it says, hold on, let me see. The company has only offered Tinder Select to the less than 1% of users it considers, quote, extremely active. It'll open applications for Tinder Select on a rolling basis, but didn't exactly say when. So not only is this expensive, it's exclusive, and you just can't have the money, click the little button in Tinder and start the subscription or whatever the case rolling. You got to apply and be approved to spend $500 a month on Tinder. So again, like Rob said, I've been married for a minute, so we will have to defer to our resident non-married specialist on the panel here. Is it that hard out here for a pimp
It is
looking for
hard out
love?
it's hard out here for a pimp, I will say that, but it ain't $500, it ain't 6 grand a year hard.
Yeah.
Not for me anyway. I mean, and I say that without a trace of facetiousness or ego. I would not pay that. But I don't know. You know what I mean? People do pay matchmakers like a lot of money.
That's the point I was going to say.
So, like, matchmakers cost like 10 G's, you know what I'm saying? So, I would do that before I would pay $500 a month on Tinder, because I think you get a better service and you're kind of being more selective and you're getting a better quality of service with the matchmaker. I would not pay for Tinder to do that. And then especially when you got to apply and wait and hope you get yeah, no, I wouldn't do that on a service like a Tinder, especially when Tinder and I think this may be this to me this sounds like Tinder's attempt to revamp its image
Mhm.
because Tinder was the hookup app.
Mhm.
Tinder was the
Mhm.
swipe left, swipe, you know what I mean? Tinder was exclusively known as the hookup app. You only went on Tinder if you was just trying to hook up, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that was it. You weren't looking for a relationship on Tinder. And which is why I was never on there. I mean, I've been on a dating app or two here or
Mhm.
there. But I specifically never went on Tinder because I always understood it to be the hookup app, and that was never what I was looking for. So I think this might be, Tinder's attempt. And they did recently acquire another app called The League, which I
Mhm.
actually was on only
Okay.
because the woman it's a woman that started that app. I can't remember her name right now, but she actually reached out to me back when I was really in my tech blogger, days. She reached out to me because she did an event in Philadelphia, and she was like, you get free access to the app, and we're bringing the singles together, yada yada yada. So I went to the event and was on the app for a little while and swiping or whatever. Never met anybody, um but yeah, I was on there, and it was supposed to be super. If you recall, there's an episode of Insecure where Molly was trying to get on the league because it was very
Yeah,
exclusive.
right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
was like very exclusive, and you had to get picked or whatever. She was trying to get into, so that was the app that she was trying to get on, and so I was on there for like a hot second. Um, and Tinder recently, I think
Acquired them, yep, in
But I think
2022.
Match Group owns all of those apps now anyway. So I think Tinder is trying to change it, trying to do a little PR rebrand with this $500 a month thing, to make it seem less like a hookup app and more like, where you gonna find your potential
Forever
life,
person.
yeah, life partner. But I'm not buying it literally and figuratively, because I'm not paying $500 to be on any app, much less Tinder.
I'm being facetious and joking here, but not really. The first time, and I think the only time we've ever talked about Tinder on this show was y'all remember when we talked about the Tinder swindler
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
back in the day?
Right.
I'm just thinking it's like, well, dag, Tinder said, well, you know what? If somebody can get on our platform and do it, why don't we just
Now
do it
now
directly?
Tinder is the swindler itself.
Exactly.
Tinder is the swindler.
So like I said, I have not been single for most of my adult life, so I cannot attest to how people would want to do something like this. But I do know, and I have friends who have used those matchmaker services. And you're right, you said 10 grand. That's not that's not even expensive. I mean that's like the entry level for some of these things, depending on what you're doing, because they set up in some cases like these destination dates and stuff to where you literally go and meet somebody in the Caribbean or something like that,
Oh,
to where they're setting all that kind of stuff up. So it's not just matchmaker, it's matchmaker, and it is travel agent, and it is tour. I mean, it's all these things that you can ultimately do.
trying to meet nobody for the first time out the country.
I'm not
I don't know
not
Some
you
look,
like that.
man,
I
some
don't know
people
you
go
like that. That's
some
that's
people some people vacation, some people go on vacation and they get out here on these islands, they get a little drink in
uh,
their system or they experimenting with
I
some
ain't trying to go on
alternative
no first date
methods
on
and they get out here and wild out and then come
yeah.
back home and come back to their regular
Well,
life.
now I know all about the, kind of sex tourism
Mhm.
that happens in Thailand and the Philippines and stuff like that, but to go on a date, that I'm paying somebody to match me and meet, like, I ain't doing all that. Um, but yeah, and I think there's too many free options out here to
Mhm.
pay for like a Tinder, like pay 500, like, Bumble's fine. Hinge is perfectly acceptable. Like, I don't know that you're getting any better quality of person just because they're paying that kind of money. You know what I mean? You think that you are because you were like, oh, this person must be really serious about meeting somebody because they're paying this money. But I don't know that that translates into seriousness or commitment, or I don't necessarily think it translates, honestly.
Just because you got a Rolls Royce don't mean you got any taste.
Yeah, honestly, it don't translate.
So
People still
I'll
be
just say
trash.
this:
It don't
if
matter.
if any of our listeners out there are using this $500 a month Tinder service, you've applied, you've been accepted, and it's working out for you. Send us some email. Send us something over at feedback at the tech John, or I should say feedback at the techjohn.com, and let us know how it's working,
I'm
because
saying.
none of us think that we would ever spend this kind of money on Tinder.
And listen, if
I
there's
just can't see it.
anybody at Tinder that wants to use me as a guinea pig and, sign me up and give me like a month or 3 months to like play around on Tinder Elite and go on some dates and I can
You said
report
Tinder
back.
Elite.
Is that what it's called? Tinder Select?
No,
What's it
this is
called?
Tinder Select. You called it
Tinder Select,
Elite.
Tinder
That's what it feels
Tinder
like,
Select
though.
Tinder Select. I will be more than happy to take 90 days and go on some Tinder Select dates and come back here to the Tech John and report on my Tinder Select dates. If you want to give me like a comp, 90-day little select membership, I would be happy to do that. So holla at me, Tinder. I'll go on some Tinder dates and see what's up.
See, this is what you get when you
For
listen to the
research
Tech John.
purposes only.
We will actually research the stuff for you. Our very own Stephanie Humphrey will go out and try
That's
Tinder
right.
Select.
That's right. Hook me up with a promo code, Tinder.
So, y'all, let's talk a little bit about social media. So, lately, when we talk about TikTok specifically, it's often about how one government entity or another is feeling some kind of way about the platform, usually because they just do not like that ByteDance is owned. That's the parent company of Twitter. They are owned by a government. Well, I don't want let me say this accurately. TikTok is owned by ByteDance. ByteDance is based in Beijing. And the fear for a lot of folks is that China is running this platform that just has all kind of data on people. But that's not where the story is. It's actually kind of died out. We really haven't talked about the government wanting to shut this company down lately. So that's faded away. It's back in the news though, TikTok, I should say, because just last week, there is a lawsuit that is filed against TikTok by two Black employees. I should say Nanette Matima and Joel Carter both claim TikTok has a practice of downplaying complaints of racial discrimination and then retaliates against people who speak out, having a chilling effect on other employees from coming forward. And they've taken their case to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which filed a class action lawsuit last Thursday. So this is not insignificant when you think about what's happening here, Steph. There's a lot of stuff that's being reported on this.
It definitely is. And in a CNN report, Annette details her experiences of discrimination, which she says started her first week on the job after joining a division of about 40, where she was the only African American. Her managers were overly patronizing and gave her heavier workloads than her white colleagues, requiring her to shoulder 75% of the sales outreach for the smaller 4-person team she worked on. Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is TikTok is a China company, but this sounds like an American problem.
It sure does. This happened in New York, and the other case I believe was in Austin, Texas, in those
Mhm.
locations.
Yeah.
So
So just some extra notes on what Nanette is that her name? Is that what we're saying?
Nanette,
Nanette. Okay. She kind of highlighted some other things that she was subjected to while working at TikTok. One of the first ones, like Stephanie mentioned, required to generate 75% of the leads for just a team of 4. So she was doing a line share of cold calling. Good leads were then taken and redistributed to the white employees. So if she got somebody on the hook, they kind of took that over for her, didn't give her any credit, was left out of meetings and conferences, and was
Ooh,
commonly referred to, now get this, commonly referred to as, quote, black snake by managers and supervisors. So suing would not have been my first offense. That would have been the second thing I did. First thing, we'll use your imagination if somebody called
right.
me that to my face.
So we have talked on this show multiple times about not other employees, not coworkers, actual managers and supervisors calling folks out their name, these racial epithets. It's like, is that a thing? Because I guess it doesn't happen when we are in the space. Well, in the case of Tesla, it actually does happen when you're in the space. But I haven't had that happen to where, I've heard that I've heard it would happen in a back room that I wasn't in. But it's like, usually it's not a manager. It's usually another coworker that you heard this from. Is that how they rolling over here at TikTok?
Apparently, and I think that was they I don't know that, I think she said she was told that that's what they called her behind her back. I don't know that
Hmm.
that the managers called her that to her face.
Oh, okay.
I can definitely relate to the being left out of the meetings thing. I mean, that was like my entire, tenure at the company I worked with, and it was just like, dude, like literally just being told, no. Like at meetings for which I was doing the work that was being presented at the meeting. And like I don't even want to present at the meeting, even though I did the work that's being presented at the meeting. I don't need to present, I'm not necessarily wanting to, steal the spotlight necessarily. I just want to sit in the back and see my work be presented so I can have some context around what the work means. Oh, well, we're sorry. Our travel budget is already at the limit for you know what I mean? Like it just that kind of thing. It's just it gets so old so quickly and so tiresome so quickly. And it's just I feel you, girl. I feel you, girl.
Do you know what that part of your story and her story reminds me of? You remember back in what was the movie Hidden Figures? Katherine
Mhm.
Johnson.
Mhm.
She was doing all the math for her
Mhm.
manager, old dude from that I can't even think of it. Sheldon,
Yeah.
whatever that show he was on,
Big Bang
and
Theory.
he would take it back. And the only reason she got invited to the meeting is because no one could do the math. They
Oh,
had
they
to
couldn't
bring
do the
her
math.
in to actually
Mhm.
come in and do the math. Oh, okay, so now I can come in here and
Right.
not say nothing other than just do
Wouldn't
this
put
math
wouldn't
and
put
show
her
you.
name on the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just it gets old so quick.
But
Ugh.
here, like I said, so everything that is happening to her is bad. And I do want to point out, the bruh in this, Joel, he, after a year on the job, so he was actually working, doing well, got a promotion, and his problem started after he got promoted. Basically, the same thing happened to him, but here's where it got worse for him. When he complained about it, they then started in his HR record saying, well, he seems like he is angry. He seems like he's, disgruntled and that kind of stuff, before they ultimately ended up getting him up out of here. And the point is, for all of this, it's almost as though you do what you're supposed to do. You're having these issues. You're supposed to go to HR. HR is supposed to be your ally. But instead of actually helping you work through the problem, they basically gaslight you and tell you, nah, ain't nothing here. It's like the things that are being said to you, the things that are being done to you, the way you feel, that's just nothing. That's all. It's all a figment of your imagination. Everything is cool. Go back to doing it the way you've been doing it. And if you complain a second time, you might not be here. That is problematic. And one of the things that happens, we have talked about this on the show a lot, is that there are companies who are trying to do better with their African American employees. So there definitely are. But there's a lot of companies who say it's like, well, we thought things were going well, and this person that we actually thought was a good employee, they just disappeared. They just like, has anybody seen Johnny? Ain't nobody seen Johnny in 2 weeks. You call Johnny up, it's like, well, I quit. Well, when did you quit? Well, when did you notice? Is kind of how it is for a lot of African Americans. And the reason is because you don't want to get that label at a company that you've been complaining or you're some kind of a troublemaker. So let me go ahead and do my work, get that resume freshened up, and then I'm just going to get up out of here and maybe move somewhere else to where these microaggressions or these actual aggressions are not as bad at this place that I go to. So you end up losing a lot of good employees when that wasn't in your intent. It seems like maybe the intent here with TikTok was that you don't want these folks in here any longer after they made these complaints because both of them were fired. And that's why the lawsuit is here. But it's just like, you should be able to go to HR, express your concerns, and not be told that there's not an issue that's happening. I can't speak for everybody, but this has happened to me. I've actually gone to HR with an issue. There is no ally in HR. And it's like you're making
No.
a decision. It's like, all right, am I going to continue to do this, or am I just going to go back and let me just freshen up that resume, get the folks who are all my allies, get them to give me some really nice LinkedIn recommendations, and I'm going to roll up out of here.
And people tell you all the time, like, HR is not your friend. Like, if I've heard that once, I have heard it 1,000 times. HR is not your friend. HR works for the company, not you.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just it's not they are there to cover the company's behind and mitigate risk for the company in situations like this. They're not there on your behalf. I mean, it sucks because they make it seem like they're there for the employees to take care of the employees, and I guess I guess that's the case in sort of benefits situations, but in this type of situation, they're there on behalf of the company, and it just they ain't there for us like that. They're just
Nope.
not.
Every year you got to take those trainings, and some of them are,
Oh, I could not
minority and
stand those.
discrimination, and
Oh,
and
I
they
could not
always tell
stand
you, they
those.
give you this whole chain of command. If you're having a problem with your manager, employees, contact this person. If you're having trouble with this, do this, that, this, and that. It's like, why go even through the trouble of doing all that if somebody actually follows the instructions and then goes through the channels and is either roadblocked or flat out told you ain't nothing going on? It's like, why even go through the effort to have me watch those videos every single year if you ain't gonna do
Right,
nothing when
right.
people actually have a problem? Just don't even
Or
do it. Just
or
don't even do
fire
it.
me once
You're right.
once I do all of that.
Yeah, I have actually at a company or two, been the highest, ranking African American. I've been in executive management at a couple of spots, and it was regular, especially the big company where I was in, fairly well up in management. People wouldn't go to HR first, like the handbook says. Okay, I know Rob. He's cool. He looks like me. Let me go bounce this off him and see what he says. And I had to tell folks, it's like, okay, understand, depending on what you tell me, I may have no choice but to take this to HR. So just be cool there. So it's like, if you're having this conversation in my office as me being, the executive director of what I was the executive director of, and you being an employee, that's an official conversation.
Right.
And I was just letting them know that, hey, we may need to have this conversation, outside of work, to where I just overhear or something like that. Or let's talk about hypotheticals and I can give you some examples of what I can do. But I understand that, because it's hard when you don't know. It's like, if I take this to HR, I might actually exacerbate the issue. And I'm going to flat out say, it's like, hey, should I take this to HR, or should I just, or can you just, hook me up on this recommendation on my LinkedIn, and I go find this other role? And I'm not going to say what I've done in those situations, because I've done many things in those situations, but that is a real conversation. You have a lot of employees who end up leaving because they just don't want to take the opportunity, or they don't want to take the chance that it rolls back up on them. And now it looks like they're leaving a company disgruntled, because that stuff it's not a big planet. It's a big world, though. There's a lot of, there's 8 billion people on the planet, but tech is a big thing, but it's a small thing.
It
People know
is.
each other, people ask conversations, and you just don't want to get that negative label on you. Oh yeah, he was slamming
Well, and then
doors and walking around mad all the time because he said that he didn't like being treated a certain way.
when you got to answer that question at the next interview, why did you leave your last job? You know what I mean? Like, you got to answer that question. And how do you answer that question when it was a whole thing with HR, and they had to get involved, and when the interviewer has to call back to that job and talk to that old manager and all the right, like, you have to do that calculus basically, and determine, do I make a stink here? Do I file that lawsuit? Do I escalate this thing up the ladder? Do I it's just it's so much mental gymnastics that you have to go through, before you just say, you know what, F it. Let me just get my resume together and keep it pushing. Honestly, not even worth it.
Yeah, I actually know of a company, or I worked at a company that they had. It wasn't HR; these were independent. It was an independent law firm. But if you felt like you couldn't take something to HR, you had the ability to take it to. I think they were called like employee advocates. So when you
I'm
talked to
taking it to a
them,
lawyer.
I'm sorry.
I said I'm taking it to a
Well,
lawyer.
yeah. So it was a law firm, but it was covered. So that's the thing. And I know someone who used it, and before they said, "But hey, I'm going to do this, but before I sign anything, and actually have you be my be my legal counsel and work through this situation with me, I need to understand that I'm not the one who's paying for this. My employer is paying for this. What rights do they have to the information? What sway do they get over the things that I say that you're working on me for?" Now, in this particular case, it was one of those things. No, we are completely independent. So anything that you tell me, none of it gets back to them unless it gets subpoenaed in court. But that is not every company, and it's not even for every employee at every company. So it's really one of those things where I feel for both of these folks, for Nanette and for Joel, because it's like they basically did what they were supposed to do. They went to HR. Things got worse after going to HR. They go back to HR again, and then they get fired. So
Well,
not
hopefully they'll get paid.
Yeah, I definitely do hope this works out for him. And this is a story we want to come back and take a look at, because it's something that I think the three of us, we are probably at a point in our career where we may be able to act and do things differently than someone early on in their career. The article didn't say where Joel was in his career, other than he had been there for a year and got a promotion. I think for Nanette, this might have been like her. She became a lawyer, then moved into this role, and this might have been like her first role in a slash like a tech sales type situation. So she's relatively early on.
Joel looked young. There was a
Yeah.
picture of
So
him in one of the articles. He looked super young too. So
so for them, I can't mess around. It's like, here's what other people are saying. Yeah, Joel complained about this exact thing that I'm having a problem with, but he complained a little bit too much and they got him up out of here. I'm not prepared to do that. So let me just get up out of here on my own. And I'm just going to grin and bear it until I can move on. It should so not have to be that way. You shouldn't have to work under that kind of stress and pressure. I think in one of the articles, she actually had a panic attack
mhm.
going to work because of how she was being treated.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So, when it's like that, that can get dangerous. Clearly for the employee, but that can get dangerous for other folks too. You don't want folks coming in
Well,
having panic attacks,
listen,
or the opposite of a panic attack. It's like, I'm taking
that's
everybody
where
up out of here.
right, that's where going postal,
That's where it comes
happened.
from.
Yeah, that's where that came from. It's just like, come on, man, you can't treat people like that.
So y'all, this is another show where we're nice and tight right at the top of the hour. Unfortunately, we did not have any new patrons this week. I told the story last week about how I got a bunch of t-shirts now, but I had my t-shirt that I wore to Benihana, and we got not only a new listener to the show, but a new patron. So that was Curtis last week. But for anyone who would like to help support the Tech John, just head over to patreon.com/the Tech John. And any one of those tiers goes so long, to help us out and fund the show and bring the tech to you the way that we bring it to you. But we didn't have any this week, so we'll see if we get some for next week. But that being said, Tech Life Steph, you actually cut out last week during the actual exit of the show.
Yeah, he was
I
having
think I got your book right.
technical
Yeah,
difficulties.
I think I got the book right. So I was able to go ahead and tell folks about your new book that you had just released.
We'll
But
just plug it again.
yeah, so yeah, go ahead and let the folks know how they can get at you, and let them know about that second edition of your new book.
Yes, the second edition of the old book is out. Don't let your digital footprint kick you in the butt. Second edition out now. You can get it on Amazon, or you can just head to my website, stephaniehumphrey.com. And you can follow me on all the socials at Tech Life Steph.
And you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BROTHATECH. I recently posted on my threads for the first time because Twitter was tripping even more so. So maybe you can find me on threads. Probably not. But yeah, I'm out there anyway. Yeah.
And I am at Robb Dunewood on all the things. And we are also at the Tech Jawn on all the things. And the Tech Jawn is on threads as well. So come check us out there. So until we meet again in a week's time.
Peace.